Welcome back to session 2 of our Interpersonal Dynamics Train the Trainer course. Last time, Roland and I talked about setting the stage, which meant that we are talking about the general concept of the course and what we are going to do, how we are going to work, stressing the experiential nature of the learning. This course that we are running at different universities, different places, has the idea that we are helping students who are usually not very familiar with interpersonal dynamics to get used to the idea, to the concepts. And this is basically laying the grounds for us to work with the students later on in more traditional group dynamic settings, like a training group, an organizational laboratory, stuff like that. We are running every week a session that lasts for 90 minutes. And we are very strict when it comes to boundaries. We talked about this in the first video. So when the session starts at 9 a.m., we start at 9 a.m. sharp. When it ends at 10:30, we end at 10:30 sharp. It's a boundary thing that we discussed in the first video. Now we are going to walk you through the second week, the second 90 minutes, and we are going to discuss a concept that you might be familiar with, which is the Johari Window. So basically helping students to understand how they appear in a group and how they show up, whether they curate their showing up and all these things. Roland and myself didn't take a look at the slides. So we might be surprised by some of our after-action reviews of our learnings, because we don't want this to be a polished marketing video. We want this to be as natural as it can be. So we are giving you the fly on the wall experience. So you are basically observing the two of us preparing for this course with the goal that if you watch this, you can prepare for this course as well, and that you can basically run this course on your own. That is the idea. Please remember to keep the disclaimer in mind that I think, and Roland, you probably would agree, that you just cannot run this type of class because it seems to be very simple, but containing the space, holding the space, something that we discussed in the first video as well, that's the tricky part. Just guiding them into an exercise, the students, is not so tricky. But holding the space, dealing with conflicts, dealing with things that come up, that emerge, that is the tricky thing. So we recommend that you do this only if you have a certain level of experience with this type of work. And certain level of experience can be that you have attended a training group yourself once or a couple of times, at least once, I would say, that you are familiar with these type of work. And with that, Roland, thank you for joining me again. Let's dive in now, I would say. Let's prepare for week 2 of our Interpersonal Dynamics session. So let me share the slides. So this is what we are doing every time when we prepared. So when we prepare. So these are the slides. Session 2, Johari Window. Like I said, you are probably very familiar with the concept, so you might not be surprised. Or you might be surprised how we approach the topic. Let me give you a general overview about how we are structuring the session, and then we are going to jump right away into our after-action reviews. What Roland and I would do in the first place is take a look at our after-action reviews from the last rounds, so that we get an idea what were the things that went well last time, what were the things that didn't went well last time, so that we can try to adapt them for the next round. So we try to learn from ourselves. At the same time, every group is totally different. So what happened last time might not happen this time, but we just want to be a little bit more aware of what went on. And I can, spoiler alert, assure you that timing is always the issue, even without having looked at the after-action review. So let's take a very quick look into the rundown of the session so that you have an idea about what we're doing. This is basically our recipe for the session. So That's the recipe, the agenda. And what we are usually doing is, and Roland, you might talk about this a little bit later on, the overnight thoughts. So we start every session with overnight thoughts. What this is something that we are going to describe later on. And we usually plan to do it 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. And we try to go with the flow. And you can imagine if it's 20 minutes, we have a huge issue with timing afterwards. But more about that later on. Then in this case, we have 5 minutes that we stress because it was an issue last time. This is the reason why we put it onto the agenda. It is not necessary that this is on the agenda all the time, but it's an important point. If you haven't raised it in the first video, at least raise it now. We sometimes receive, or let's say not sometimes, quite often, we receive emails from students outside of the class. So they're emailing us with questions. So they tell us that they can't be here next time. They have a question about a rule, whatever it is. So they try to get in touch with us, the authorities, outside of the group, outside of the plenary. And we said that communication with us is only possible inside the plenary or via a representative of the group. So they need to have a formal representative. That might be the case, like a student spokesperson. So they can contact us on behalf of the group, but we want everything to be discussed in the group because it is part of the dynamic. So if they get in touch with us and they do this outside of the plenary, outside of this container of the 90 minutes, this can lead to issues. And I think, Roland, we have this nearly every time, don't we?
Yeah, it happens a lot of the times. And I think it's a little bit in the typical Western culture of hierarchy. Because people do what they are used to do, and they are used to address certain things outside of the plenary, as we say, because it's how things were done in everyday's business. And it has a certain advantage. It's faster. There are probably decisions to take that are not really interesting for all the rest. But in our case, the whole thing is interesting because we want to make conscious how organization works. And to make it conscious, it always becomes a little bit clumsy, but it has a lot of data in it that can be helpful for students to get an insight in different, let's say, processes that are running parallel and that are running all the time and that nobody is thinking about or nobody is aware of. And it's important to make this visible if you want to talk about human interaction, if you want to talk about certain routines that are running and how those routines interconnect, how those routines do finally have an impact on the whole process as such. But it's all the time the case that there are at least one or two people that are addressing us outside of the plenary with some special needs or wishes or special cases they are facing and asking us to somehow deal with that or how they should deal with that in the context of the course.
Plus, the two things that you mentioned, it can be a cultural aspect, and we are working with culturally totally diverse people, sometimes with people who are only from Germany, and sometimes with people where you have 20 people and 18 different cultures. So that might be a thing. We also have psychodynamic perspective on these things. So while I'm saying that, there is an interesting paper. It's called The Interpretative Stance. I'm trying to remember to at least provide a link to the paper, The Interpretative Stance. And if we take a look at this from a psychodynamic perspective, why is someone contacting us outside of the group? One reason could be just clarifying a question. The other reason could be, and I'm throwing out some hypothesis, that this person wants to get closer to those who are in power. It might also be the case that this person pretends that everyone is agreeing to what the person brings to us, and the person is bringing it to us to get an individual advantage, pretending that it is an ask from the whole group. So it can be, and I'm not saying that they're doing it to manipulate or that they're doing it because they are mean people. It is, mostly it's an unconscious process. So they're doing it because, Roland, like you said, they're used to it. They have learned that this approach is very successful and that they can work their way through it. It can also be a way to get in touch with us because there is a lot of anxiety that is going on, and they just try to clarify the anxiety, or they might be addressing something that they think is their own question, but it is a question of the whole group. And if we discuss this with the individual person, we miss these data points in the plenary and in the large group. So it's quite an important thing. And we explain it that way. So we tell students how we think in this kind of metacognition. Sometimes they find it weird, especially this interpretative stance. And what we always have to tell them is, it is just data. It is interesting. There is no such thing as a dysfunctional group. It is just a group that is behaving, and we are not judging them. We just see this as data points and data in the here and now. While we are discussing it, this is the absolutely interesting part. This is how we work in the here and now with them. So tiny little thing. I never thought that we would discuss so much about it, but it can be quite a great starting point. So whether it might come up or not, we will have it in for 5 minutes, probably a bit longer. And then we will go into something that is called a pool exercise. We will show you the pool exercise later on. We do this on Miro, but you can use a similar tool for 15 minutes. Then we are getting into the Johari window explanation. For 5 minutes, we give them the chance to draw their individual windows for 5 minutes. So it is always good to tell the students to have a pen with them, a piece of paper with them. And then we go into breakout groups. And at the end, we have an open space to discuss whatever has emerged throughout the last probably 60 minutes of that. So let's go into the after action review. Roland and I'm excited to see what happened the last times. Let's take a look at, we have so many. Just let's take a look at some of them. And I'm starting in 2022. So I'm starting way back. Let's see if this is still an issue. So after every session, Roland and I sit down to do an after action review. What went well? What didn't went well? What is the state of the group? Are there any issues that we need to be aware of? What is happening in the group? That helps us to make sense. And Roland, in this session, we said the pool went very well. We need to tell students that they are responsible for their own experience and risks. Make sure that all students are on the board, on the Miro board before the exercise. And if they are not, we are adding missing students, which is an interesting dynamic, because if students don't put themselves on the board, thinking in psychodynamic terms again, what does it mean? It's a data point. What does it mean that we do the work for the students by putting them onto the board? So we help them in their avoidance. And what does this tell us about us as lecturers in relation to the group? So these are the topics that we are going to discuss. And Roland, I was surprised. Time was on the point in this session. So one of the unique sessions where we've managed to have everything on time.
Yeah. Yeah, and one reason for that is that we did some work for the students. Because if you prepare like the pool exercise, and as Jürgen said, the students have to put their avatars on Miro up front. the moment you have all the avatars of all the students on Miro, you can start with the work. The moment there are some of the students missing on the Miro board, some of the avatars, the moment it takes time to let the missing students create the avatars, upload the avatars on Miro so that you can start. So one of the reasons why we do some work for the students before we start that full exercise is that it helps us to stay in the planned time frame.
Yes.
And we can address, or we do address, the issue that some of the students, if this was the case, that some of the students did not upload their avatars, but we still upload the missing avatars for ourselves just to have a better idea and a better possibility to stay in the time frame we planned ahead.
Yeah. And it's, I remember we had a discussion about that. We are losing the opportunity of a great data point. We could raise that, we could discuss it, and we could drag the students along and say, okay, now you have to do it, and we're going to wait for you, which would make the students who already did it probably furious. And that might lead to a discussion about those who are fulfilling the tasks and are ahead of the curve, so to speak, and others who say, I've forgotten it, maybe I don't care, maybe it's not so important for me, and the clash of those two groups. But the problem here is that we have the 90 minutes and we need to get things done in this setting. If we would have a lot of time, we would probably exactly have the discussion that we are now having on the video with the students, trying to use, again, what is happening in the moment as a data point to learn something about the interpersonal dynamics of individuals with a group and vice versa. So quite an interesting thing. But we decided, like Roland said, to speed up to get things done. Sounds a bit like a justification if I say it like that, Roland.
It was a justification because there is always, when you have a certain concept or a certain idea of a course, then you have to have some boundaries, like time boundaries.
Yeah.
And the moment you have that, you have to think about the whole setting. And the moment you think about the setting, you have restraints.
Yeah.
And one of the restraints, which is very interesting, I think, to see is if you do pure group dynamics like you would do in a training group, then there is nothing else but the pure here and now. And for that, you don't need any preparation. You just need the people that are here and now, and you can discuss whatever is happening here and now. What we are using here is aspects of training groups. So this is when we are approaching the here and now, mixed with aspects of a planned training that we are facilitating and that we are also steering in a more, let's say, in a stricter form of leadership as you would do in a training group. And the problem is all the 90 minutes you have, you can dive into the here and now. But this would also mean that content-wise, it would go wherever it goes. So you wouldn't have any possibility to bring forward some content if you strictly go to the here and now, which you would do in a training group. Here we do a mixed thing. We called it the mixed group dynamic form. And the mixing is the mixing of concepts that we train or teach, like the Johari Window, with diving into the here and now. And so it's always a switching of letting the process run on the one side and switching back to giving clear orders, giving clear boundaries, telling the people what they have to do in the next minutes, and asking the people to do. So it's this mixture that makes it difficult, but also rewarding. And this mixture, and then I come back to Jürgen's question about that he was somehow apologizing for what we did, or not apologizing. I think what word did you use?
It felt like a justification.
Justification, yes.
Yep.
So I come back to this justification. Yes, it is a justification, and this justification is needed to bring our point clearly for you. And our point is that we, on the one hand, have a very clear structured process of teaching certain concepts like the Johari window and so forth, and switching to the here and now and being in this T group mode of interaction.
Totally agree. At the same time, while you were talking, I was still thinking about the justification aspect. And I totally agree to the structural point. At the same time, I realized maybe it was also some kind of performative stance. So I want to perform well in front of the students. I want to deliver what the plan was to deliver. So I went into kind of a performance mode. And I'm wondering if at that point of time of the class and in the context where we teach this class, this is something that I'm also picking up from the students. So that they want to do a good job, that they want to perform, that they want to show that they're efficient, all these type of things. Just an interesting thought for me to sit with. And I remember we discussed the performance pressure that sometimes we as lecturers bring into the group of students in the university context. So they need to perform in a certain very normative way sometimes. So are we bringing it into the system, or are we picking it up from the system? And these are the discussions, again, to you who are watching the video, that Roland and I would reflect on now. And we probably don't come to a conclusion, most likely don't come to a conclusion, but it's just something to keep in mind and to see, okay, can we change something? Do we have to change something? Can we just go with the flow? Very often, I have to say, I learn something about myself when I work with the students, because they trigger certain dynamics that I have been unaware of. And we also addressed that in the first video. This is, or the benefit of us is working together. So we highly recommend that you're doing this together, because if you work together, the other person can add a tremendously good angle. Time was on the point. We didn't do the comfort zone model this time. We have planned this. Maybe we can take a look at it. And I remember we often skip it because it's just too much content. It's still nice, but maybe the students don't need it. At the end, we had a very brief Q&A. So what are your questions? What came up? Is there anything that you want to share with the group? And then we check out with a gesture, which is the fastest way to check out for us, which basically means I'm counting down to 3, and then everyone is doing a gesture. We are holding it for a couple of seconds until I say stop. And then we can take a look at the screen. We are running this virtually. And then we stop the meeting. So it's very fast. You can do it in 1 minute. And it's basically do a gesture, how you feel, for example. And then I'm counting down 3, 2, 1. And then people are making a gesture. We are holding it. You have the chance to observe the gestures of the others. And then I say, stop. Thank you very much. Click, meeting ended, boundary met. That's the thing. At that point, session 2, we had a very open discussion in the group, which is not always the case. Sometimes students hold back, but that was very open, seemed to be very good. Let's take a look at 1 or 2 other. I'm randomly picking them out now. So here, that was an earlier session, make the pool on Miro larger so that the icons really fit well into it. So that's like a very practical lessons learned. It went very well as it seemed. Did the comfort model this time and here and now again. So it seems like we had time, or we thought it should be important to do it. So we did it. Again, very brief Q&A checkout with a gesture. Oh, it seems we had an issue this year. Keep in mind that one lecturer can lose connection in a virtual environment, have presentation open on both ends, because that can lead to a lot of issues. Ultimately, it's a data point. So why did this happen? You could say it's a technical issue, but maybe it's a broader thing. So that's just another very practical thing. And one topic in the group today was culture. Specifically, we talked about people in India, from India, or they discussed. And we just talked about it, performance of the group. Who will start talking, who will not start talking. So that emerged very early on. So that's basically, I think that's enough with after action reviews. Roland and I are basically taking a look at the last 3 after action reviews that we did. Main focus is obviously the last one, but we still try to keep the last 3 in mind, just to have the system in mind, because it develops and it's not a hard cut. The whole system develops, we develop, and it's just important to have a broader perspective on the system of the teaching. I would call it that way. Hold on, leave the overnight thoughts, the after action review, and go to the overnight thoughts.
Good idea.
So that is happening quite early on. Plus, we sometimes have people who haven't joined. Roland, would you talk a little bit about the overnight thoughts? You are addressing, or you are starting it most of the time.
The overnight thoughts are mainly a possibility to get some data out of the impact of our actions the day before or regarding the last session. So whenever we start with the first session and we go to the second session, and the first thing at the starting point of the second session would be the question, what were your overnight thoughts regarding the last session? And this has to do with our body as a data processing system. One of the problems of consciousness is that we are only conscious regarding our consciousness, which from the point of consciousness looks like we know for 100% what's going on. The problem is that consciousness itself, so if you are 100% conscious, then you are conscious of about less than 1% of the data that are perceived of your body and somehow processed of your body. So there is a huge amount of data processing beyond consciousness. And whenever you have a session like we do, there might happen a lot of processes connecting or connected to the session we had. And the overnight thoughts are a possibility, first of all, to go a little bit into this differentiation of consciousness and subconsciousness and unconsciousness, and to find out some impact of our actions and of our doings together a little later, so that the people had a little time to think about, to sleep about. Maybe there were occurring some dreams, so we ask the people to share, if they want to share their dreams, that they think might be connected to our work here. So the overnight thoughts are all in all a possibility to get a broader view of the impact it had on the certain individuals and to get a broader view of the whole body as data processing entity, and to give the students the practice of reflection, and that it takes time. So you need to take some time to reflect on something, and this time is provided by the overnight thoughts sequence. And then whatever shows up might be interesting, and the plenary decides what is interesting and what is not interesting. So it's not it's no such thing like interesting and not interesting overnight thoughts, but it's only the thing like if somebody tells his or her overnight thoughts, the next question is, how does the plenary react on that? And so it's a pretty open, let's say, a pretty open process. You never can really predict what shows up, and you never can really predict how the people in the plenary are touched to whoever tells his or her overnight thoughts. So it's a mixture out of giving the students the idea how the human body processes data, giving the students the opportunity to try this out, and giving the plenary the opportunity to get into a discussion on the material that is presented.
Plus, we have the chance to onboard people who have not been there the last time. That's a thing. And sometimes we ask people, what would you, the ones from the first session, like to tell the new members of our group? It's an onboarding thing. Just share what is important for you. Afterwards, we sometimes ask the new members, so those who haven't attended the first session, which is a data point. I was tempted to say which is annoying because it is, but it's also a data point. How do you feel, and what is important for you to feel as a part of the community? So 2 questions you can ask to either of the groups. I also find it interesting with the overnight thoughts when they share it, that we get a broader perspective of the system, because we are in a system. And so we receive, like Roland said, a lot of data points. It is about what is going on, what went on in the week. But there is also a risk in the overnight thoughts. Roland and I, we like to discuss with students sometimes, and we like to talk. And sometimes we get sucked into a discussion with a very active student. And so the overnight thoughts are also an amazing place to avoid doing the work later on. So if we get hooked in the overnight thoughts at something, and we start to discuss with someone, there is a risk that the others are observing 2 or 3 people discussing with each other, or that students run away into the there and then. And that's a very tricky thing, because obviously, what do you want to share from the time in between is a there and then space. But if they start talking about, I experienced something, this and that 2 years ago in a job, we have to gently bring them back into the course. And that's a feeling thing. And we are sometimes, we have to be very aware what is going on in the overnight thoughts session. And sometimes Roland and I, when we are working together, we are online, obviously. We have a chat running between the 2 of us, and in the chat, we say, hey, we are just chit-chatting now, or we are becoming anti-task. Should we stop? Should we let it run? So just a quick back and forth between the 2 of us to see where are we in that. And sometimes if I start talking too much, Roland would say, oh, Jürgen, I think let's cut it. It's going too far or whatever. And it's okay. It is okay to do that. So these are the overnight thoughts. I think we covered it. We could talk about social dreaming, but we never do that in this course. But it reminds me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it is basically a concept that sort of stems out of social dreaming. Yeah. Maybe one hint for the concept of our teaching, and this is related to the overnight thoughts, but also related to the things we discussed before. There are two modes of working regarding our teaching. One mode is the intervision mode. This would be when Jürgen and I write each other chats in private, where we either give ourselves some reflection about how we perceived the other. So the intervision means that we think about the process and our own behavior and the perception of the behavior of the other within the teaching process. This is the intervision side of it. And there is the supervision side on it when we supervise the students and give them some ideas of our perception or give them some interpretations we think that might be helpful. So there are those two layers in general that are important for that teaching. This is our intervision. So that's why Jürgen also emphasized that it's very important to be at least two teachers, because each of the teachers can help the other to get back on track if someone loses the track, and each of the teachers can help the teachers themselves with the reflection process. Intervision side and the supervision side is when we provide some knowledge to the students, when we provide some interpretation to the students, when we provide some guidance to the students. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add here.
And we're not just doing intervision in writing. We sometimes, or we very often do it verbally when we sit together. So after each session, we have at least 30 minutes to reflect what went on between us. And that's basically called staff work. And the better you do your staff work, the better you will be able to work with the group, and the better the group will able to work. If you have unprocessed things in the staff, there will be unprocessed things in the group, for sure. So the better you work, the better it is. Staff work can be tremendously hard. It can be super difficult. But if you are not doing it, if you are not able to do it, you can't expect the students to be able to do it, because you are, let's say, more trained to do that. Supervision is a word. If you watch this and you are familiar with coaching supervision, you might say, oh, it's not the word that I would use. And another word that I learned recently is leadership consultant or group consultant. So I act as a consultant to the group by sharing my thoughts, by sharing my hypothesis, by sharing my observations, all with the task to help them learn what is going on, to make sense of what is going on. So that is the way how I would see my task. So staff work, and I think we stressed this in the first video as well, Roland, is super, super important. If you are running this course alone, you can do it. I would say it's probably not as good as it could be. Or maybe you're brilliant. That's another thing. Or maybe we are not. Anyhow. All right. So these are the overnight thoughts. Let's take a look at the next slide that we sometimes show. I would say it's an optional slide. It's an interesting slide, but it's very full. It's very loaded. Where sometimes we have shown this before. That's why it says revisited. It's basically areas of existence that we can zoom onto, and we specifically zoom onto the last two of the three very much. The first one is the fundamental reality of individual experience. So how do you experience your inner life, your personal world? What is going on for you in the group? Because this is helpful to understand your values, your beliefs, your preferences, your socialization. You basically understand yourself much better if you pull away this curtain and see what is going on in yourself. So you basically take a look at the backstage compared to the front stage, if we would keep Goffman's terminology in mind a little bit. So that is one thing that is interesting. I would say that is not the core focus of this course. The second one is the external world. So how do you act in relation with others and the various roles that you are having in? Later on in this course, we have a section that is specifically devoted to roles that you play or take up in a group. So we are looking at the external world and at the interaction with another person. So is there someone in this group who is triggering you? Is there someone who is annoying you? Are you annoying someone? Are you triggering someone? So that's a very interesting lens to always keep in mind when we are in this 90 minutes sections. And the last thing, that is basically where we will investigate ourselves in the connection with the larger group and the impact on us and it. So a larger group is so much more complex. It is so fast. It is sometimes so crazy that it is just super interesting. Yeah, we could dive into that a lot. And usually the focus on this third area is in our other course, where we meet the students for 4 days and work with them for 4 days in a row. So it's much denser, it's much faster, it's more intense, so to speak. So in this third area, we have the objective, subjective, the person political, internal, external, and they all meet in this melting pot of the group. So we also have a group here, but it will be much more intense when we meet. Very often we run this 90-minute sessions before we have the 4-day class. And the idea is, like I mentioned in the beginning, to get people used to the language that we're using, that they get used to and realize that it is okay to make themselves vulnerable, to bring themselves into it, because the more they bring themselves into it, the more they will get out of it. They can try to pull out, which is okay. It's a data point. And even if we think they are not doing the work, they are doing work. The question is, what kind of work are they doing? And maybe we will get back to the discussion that we often have is the good students, the ones who speak a lot, and the bad students, the ones who don't speak a lot, which is quite an interesting discussion. So we don't try to spend too much time on that slide. Sometimes we don't show the slide, but what is important is mentioning that the more you bring yourself in, the more you will get out, because this is the transition to the first exercise, to the pool exercise. Before we get there, have I forgotten anything about that? Oops.
No, I think we are quite on track and
All right.
everything's fine.
So let's take a look at the pool exercise. So the question is, how deep would you like to dive in? And we usually do this in Miro. I'm going to share the Miro board real quick. Let me see, where are we? Here we are. Okay, stop it. And we are going to Miro. Now, what you can see here is the Miro board. So we basically, I don't remember if the picture is AI created or if we just, I don't know. It's probably AI created. So you need a picture of a pool. And we like this one a lot because you have different areas. You have the shallow area on the right side of the pool, so you can dip a toe in, or you can jump into the deep part of the pool. It's darker, it's deeper, it's colder, it's a bit more risky maybe. Or you can say, I take a look at the sideline, or you can say, I will hang out on the lounge. And here you can see the avatars of different people who were in this particular class. So this flower person decided to move the avatar to this specific area in the pool. So when we start, usually all of the avatars are placed on the side, so that we tell people, find your avatar and then move your avatar to the area where you would like the avatar to be. It is quite important that people add their names. For privacy reasons, we have removed them or just put abbreviations here. So that is important. And that is the work that the students need to do before we start the class. So after the first session, we usually send them an email, say, this is the link to the board. Please find your avatar. Here is a link to a page with clips. And that's basically the instruction here. I'm going to read it just in case you can read it on your screen where you're watching it. So the instruction is, we kindly ask you to choose and upload your personal avatar to the Miro board. You can find with the link below before the next session. So we're posting the Miro link. Also, please add your name to the avatar and group the two objects so that they can be moved together. Honestly, this is an issue because people don't know how to group objects. Make sure that if you are preparing for the session, go onto the board and check out if everything is well set. And then I tell them my avatar is already online as an example. Avatars can be found here or at any other site you would like to use. Feel free to choose any other object. Whatever they think, whatever they want to use, feel free to use it. So that is what you need to check before the session. And then we tell them, now place your avatar, and everyone is scrambling on the board and placing the avatar. And afterwards, it's quite interesting to ask the people to take a look at where they are, where others are, and where they are in relations to others. And if they take a look at where they are, to think about where they would like to be. This exercise is also a nice way to signal, look, I want to dive in, I really want to involve myself. So I probably put myself in the very deepest, darkest part of the pool, but maybe I don't want it. So do I already start to put up a show here? Do I perform? Do I create something? And again, if people would do it, it's not a bad thing. It's just a data point, and we want them to become aware that they are unconsciously doing that. And then they can take this thought and reflect on it. So why are they doing it? We also tell them that they can move their avatar anytime throughout the course. The only thing is that we are asking them to tell the group that they have moved it. Never happened, in my experience. So that's the pool exercise. Pretty straightforward, and I like it a lot. Is anything that I've forgotten, Roland? Anything that we need to...
No, I don't think so. I just want to say, you already mentioned it, but I want to emphasize it. Never underestimate technical issues. So this is online. So all of the participants are online. You have to prepare for as much as you can. There will always be technical issues you're not able to prepare for. But at least those you're able to prepare for. Let's say, like Jürgen said, that both of the lecturers have all the slides ready to show. If one lecturer has issues with sharing the slides, the other one can jump in. Think about that the people have different devices, that they use different systems of IT, and so forth. Or that they have, like Jürgen said, that they don't have that knowledge about grouping or other things that are related to the platform you use. So especially if you do things online, always keep in mind that the technical stuff has to be screened very closely, because there are a lot of things that are hidden in this area of the performance. And even in a performance like ours, where the main issue is not the technical issue, the moment you are online, it has a big impact, and you need to somehow cope with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Technology is super helpful, and it's a nightmare at the same time. And we experience this every time basically. But yeah, hope for the best, prepare for the worst is probably what we can say. Another thing I forgot to mention, these avatars, they are also nice. You can think about whether you would like to use it or not. People can create a wallpaper with their avatar on them and use it as a background for their calls. So they basically have their avatar having their back virtually, literally. And that sometimes gives comfort to the students to have someone in their back watching them like a guardian person in a way. It's a nice thing. You can do it. I wouldn't say it's a mandatory thing, but it can add a nice catch to all of that. All right, so let's leave Miro again. So we did it. We reflected it briefly with the students. And now let me get back to the PowerPoint slide again. And we are doing this in real life as well. So switching all screens, that type of things. And students basically see the same, I wouldn't call it issues, but you need time to switch screens and do this and do that. And just factor that in, that you don't get stressed when you have to share screens. So make sure that your computer is quite clean, that you don't have a million tabs open and stuff like that, because this will create confusion for yourself. Another interesting data point again, but it's also super annoying. So let's get back to PowerPoint. So we finished that, and now we get to the second part, the second exercise, so to speak, the Johari windows. And you might be familiar with it, you might be not. In any case, let's take a look at them. The windows are basically these 4 squares, and they look at you. So you know something about yourself, and others know something about yourself. And that is the public open arena. This is, let's say, the front stage. This is where you perform, potentially. There are also things that you know about yourself, but others don't know these things about yourself. These are the private parts, the hidden ones. Sometimes it's called the facade that you show to others, but they can't look behind the facade. That is a consciously controlled boundary that you put up for others to stop at this boundary. Then it is getting interesting. Or let's say in the public part is things that we all know. The private part, the interesting thing is, if you're working in a group, we often talk about trust. So trust comes up quite early in the process, I would say, that people say, I don't know how open I can be and how trustworthy it is this safe, and these type of things. And one way to create trust is to decrease your private and hidden area and to increase your public and open area, to share things, private things about yourself with the others. That is one way to create trust. Then there is this area, the blind spot. Others know it, others are aware of it, but you are not aware of it. And that is where feedback comes into play. Sometimes it's not called feedback, it's called input. So you get input from others about yourself, how they perceive you. And we could talk a lot about feedback. That feedback is basically, if I give you feedback, I'm trying to submit you to my norms. So you potentially learn a lot more about myself than you learn about yourself. If I give you feedback, if I tell an employee, I want you to be more punctual, you are not punctual, the person learns that this is one of my values. So that is a discussion that you could have with your students, but be careful. Don't get into lecturing. That is sometimes something that we do. And this also always creates time issues. Can be interesting. But if I start to lecture, I retreat into a role that I'm comfortable with. I'm very comfortable with lecturing, but it's potentially not helpful for the students in this context. So less is more, I would say. They need to understand the concept, and you would be surprised. They don't need too much explanation. It's quite a very good framework, I would say. So we tell them that this course is a chance to get input from others to decrease their blind spot. And the last part, the unknown or the unthought known, this is a super interesting part. And that is very hard to tap into, the unknown aspects. And you need to form hypotheses about that. For example, if we look at Roland and myself, you will see the public part is there is a screen of or bookshelf behind Roland. My bookshelf is much smaller if you see it. I have a title in my name. Roland doesn't have a title in his name. You don't even see his first name, you see his last name. And you might wonder, why is Roland and the J over there? So Roland knows it, you don't know it, so it's a private, it's a hidden part in a way. So we could pick these cues up. Now, think about the unthought known. What does a title mean in my name? And now we can get into this interpretative stance. We can try to create hypothesis. What is going on? It might be a defense against anxiety. So if I put my title in front of my name, how dare you to question me? Because I'm a professor. So maybe it's an attempt to silence you even before you thought about asking a question, or even before you try to question me, just with this signal. And of course, today I put it in there with the exact intention to highlight it. But maybe someone did it without the conscious intention to do it, with an unconscious intention as a defense against an anxiety that the person is being questioned in their authority. Now, if we continue this train of thought psychodynamically with this interpretative stance, if we look at the books, and you see a lot of people nowadays with books in their background. Some people have like huge shelves of books. And books can be a very subtle way, an unconscious way, to signal the other viewers, look, this is the knowledge that I have, and I have it in my bag. It's another way, besides a title, to show authority. It can have multiple other reasons, but it can be a hypothesis to do that. So these are the unknown things. And sometimes students react very strongly if we put these hypotheses out. And they basically immediately, it's like a reflex. They say, no, that's not the case. And I sometimes tell them, look, if you are so fast in pushing away this thought, there might be something to it. And I point them back to the thing that we did in the first session. Never waste a good frustration. Just try to sit with the thought. And the words that I usually use is, okay, let's just play with it. Let's play with the thought. Pretend there is something to it. What could it be? And this allows students to grapple with the thoughts that they don't want to have. It's a fascinating, these processes are usually fascinating. And sometimes Roland and I, when we reflect the course afterwards, or the session afterwards is, oh, do you remember there was this and that situation and this particular student, there was the eyes lit up and you could literally see in their faces, in their whole posture, oh, yeah, might be something to it. So the exercise is amazing, absolutely amazing, simple as it is. After our explanation, I tell them that, I show them my windows. And to do that, I have prepared this slide. And what I tell them is that I want to decrease my hidden window by saying something to the group that I usually would not say. And to make my blind spot smaller, I could ask for feedback in the group. And with the unconscious, that is something that we usually try. And this, what you see now, this is my current window. And what I told you is what I want to do. And usually I'm very transparent here. I tell them that to increase my hidden part of the window, my hidden window, I have to tell the group something that they don't know. And I usually tell them that I used to work as a bouncer once, which is like students would not expect that, but it's true. And you know it now as well. And immediately that gives you a sense of my private me. So I am opening up myself. Even now I'm doing it. If you have watched the last hour until now, you have learned something about myself. So I become more human. And it can be a thing to discuss, to talk about, to get to know me better, to understand me better. And that, again, brings people closer together, creates trust, fantastic thing, especially in the group where you don't know each other. And with this, we transition them into the exercise. Before I do that, Roland, anything that you would add, any comments? I can see you are visualizing myself as a bouncer.
Yeah, just one thing, this connects perfectly to the pool exercise. Because what is done in the pool exercise is pretty much in a more, let's say, symbolic way, what is then done in the Johari window in a more rational way with more words of explanation and stuff like that. And so it connects very good to this pool exercise, and it shows the students how to start in a more symbolic, more, let's say, open way about telling people something, not in words, but in the action. Where do I put my avatar? Or even what avatar do I choose? This is already a big message you can give, or there is already a big hiding or a big opening in the avatar itself. And then the switch to the Johari window is a very nice transition into a more rational way of concept of the unconscious and perception and so forth. Yeah.
So now we are telling the students, and we're showing them this slide. Now turn off your camera and microphone. Then take a piece of paper and draw your window or your windows as you see them now, regarding the size of each window in this group. Think for yourself, what do you like about your window? And what would you like to change? And then take a second color and draw the changes that you would like to make. And if you're done, please turn on your camera so that we can see who is ready for the next step. And then we're quiet. We just show this slide, and we take 5 minutes-ish. And then you see that the camera pictures are popping up again, and then you can gently ask XYZ, how's it going? Do you need some time? But it works quite well. It's not too complicated. And afterwards, so if everyone is back on, we put people into trios in breakouts. And we ask them to share the drawings in the trio for 15 minutes. So everyone has 5 minutes. Share it, and then so they can just hold it into the camera. So what would help you to make the quadrant XYZ, whatever you choose, bigger or smaller? So if you want to decrease the hidden one, do you need support of whatever kind? So what do you need from others? At the same time, second question, what do you want to do? Like telling risky things like that you have worked as a bouncer, stuff like that. And what do you need specifically from the large group potentially? These questions are not set to stone, but it is always helpful to give them some guidelines to put their thinking on the track. And afterwards, there is an invitation to share what is resonating with you in the plenary. And it doesn't mean report out, aka look what kind of great job we did. It is more like, what is resonating with you? What came up? What are your thoughts now? What were your feelings during the exercise? Whatever is important for you. And that is the groundwork for the open space, where we hopefully have 20 minutes to do that, but sometimes we don't have. And that's basically the exercise. Sometimes, because we mentioned it in the beginning, sometimes we show the comfort zone framework. But before we do that, that's it, Roland, isn't it? Anything that we need to add?
I just want to add that there is no right or wrong way to draw one's Johari window.
Yeah.
That's very important, so that the people know that they are in a course where we are not focusing on normative knowledge, where we say like how to do this and that in the right way and give examples how it's done in the wrong way. But this is much more a course where we facilitate the possibility for the students to experiment with their own behavior in the safe space of the plenary that is provided by us teachers and lecturers.
Yeah. So that is the Johari window exercise. We mentioned the comfort zone framework, and you can sometimes bring it a little bit earlier, closer to the pool exercise. You can do it after the pool exercise, before the Johari window. We very often we drop it. Still, it's a nice thing. So let's see it as an add-on, and you can decide whether you would include it or you wouldn't include it. Always keep in mind it is consuming time. Maybe because this particular slide is a bit complex. That's usually the slides that I show them. You probably are familiar with this comfort zone framework. It's not really a framework. It's not like hard science. For me, it's more a metaphor, but it's a very good one. I like it. Because you can stay in your comfort zone throughout the class, throughout the discussions. You can stay in your comfort zone, but the risk is boredom. So you won't learn a lot. The others won't learn a lot if you are there potentially. Maybe they learn exactly because of that. You never know. And that brings us into the learning zone. And at the border, you have increased attention, you have interest, but learning always means discomfort, that you are learning that you are vulnerable, or that you try to perform, and the more you try to perform, the more you mess up things. So that's discomfort. And I would say it's a very good thing to be in a slight discomfort when it comes to learning, because this is the area for me where learning really happens. The problem is, if the discomfort gets too much, anxiety can build up to the point where you get really stressed, and when you get panic, and then you shut down, you shut off. And that is not helpful either. So you don't want people to be in a panic zone, and you don't want people to be bored all the time. So you want them to be in this sweet spot. And we don't want them to be too anxious. Anxious is not a very good thing. Here is something that I usually show in another class. So the framework is just enough on the left side. This is just what I show in another class, where people are saying that anxiety might reduce your IQ, your working memory capacity drops. If you're anxious, your risk aversion is triggered, or your loss aversion, which is not always a bad thing, but it lets you take decisions that focus on the short term. And this anxiety, in one way, it can be a stable trait, relatively speaking, versus state anxiety. State anxiety is something that you experience when something specific happens. You get a rush of blood, like you see a spider crawling by, and if the spider is gone, you're not anxious anymore. We should differentiate anxiousness and fear, but don't get into that now. There seems to be a gender aspect in it, but I don't want to get too deep into this anxiety research thing. Because the more we do that, the more we bring people back into their heads And that is not necessarily what we want. Because then they can discuss, what is the difference between state anxiety and anxiety as a trait? What is the gender aspect of it? Tremendously interesting topics, but not helpful for this particular class. So if you use this framework, use the left one and just highlight that there are different layers where they can move. And since we don't know the students very well, students need to take care of themselves so that once they realize they're getting into the stress or even worse, panic area, that they say, okay, that's enough. I'm pulling out. So they need to have this level of self-care. And we really stress that. But since we mentioned it, at least here is a slide that you could use or couldn't use, whatever you do. The more we talk about it, Roland, the more I would say, don't use it.
It depends on the time and on the situation. I think this might be a good point to mention that even if we do those 90-minute pieces of lecturing, there is a rolling setting. And the rolling setting means, just as Jürgen said at the beginning, that the hard boundary is the time boundary. But within the time boundary, you still have choices. You have choices to do so and so many minutes for the overnight thoughts. You have choices to skip the comfort zone model. You have choices to skip other models. You have choices to skip the overnight thoughts and so forth. And this thing can only be decided during the process and regarding the actual group you are working with. So there might be groups where the comfort zone model is very helpful and very necessary, and it's better to skip other things or to shorten other things. That's why Jürgen told you that we are sometimes chatting with each other regarding whether we should go on with the overnight thoughts or whether we should go on with a certain discussion and so forth, or whether we go to the next content, or whether we use the content or we don't use the content. And that's again, this leads us back to the double nature of that course. The double nature, the mixed group dynamic form, is about being in the here and now and being into content. And the further developed and the better a plenary works regarding mutual discussion, regarding the actual comfort zone, not the model, but the actual comfort zone that is happening in the plenary, you are deciding whether to go rather to the more open group dynamic approach and skip some content, or where you go rather to the content and skip the group dynamic approach because the plenary is simply not mature enough to dive deeper into that. And that's again a question, and this question can be resolved by the comfort zone and the perceived comfort zone of the lecturers. So we as lecturers evaluate our own level of comfort zone, let's say every 15 minutes during a course of 90 minutes, and ask ourselves whether we are already bored, so we need to heat up the process a little bit, or whether we have the perception that pressure and anxiety is too high up. So we try to slow down the process a little bit and calm it down a little bit. So I wouldn't give an advice like skip the comfort zone or don't skip the comfort zone. Just go with the flow. The only hard boundary is the time boundary. The rest is up to the process.
Yeah. And very important point, and you have the chance to adjust chat-wise, sure, but that students are working, at least in this section, they work for 15 minutes in trios. And during the 15 minutes, Roland and I, we can discuss where we are with the group, where we are as a pair, and how to proceed with the students in the next round. So sometimes we adapt more or less flexibly. But besides that, I would say it's a very robust setting that works very, very well so far. After that, we have open space where we basically tell the people, okay, like we said on the slide before, what is resonating with you? What are your thoughts? Anything you would like to bring in? Sometimes people are quiet. And if you are sitting there and as a lecturer and you know that ideally you have 20 minutes ahead and students are just sitting there looking at you, expecting you to do what professors usually do, teach them something, and you are not doing that, they will try to involve you in discussions. They will try to pull you out of the consultant's role, which is potentially a bit more passive than a lecturing role. And you might be tempted to start lecturing them because you are panicking because you have 20 minutes and think, oh, I don't know how to fill the time. Every time, or very often, I get insecure about, oh, there is too much time left. Roland is more relaxed about that. Usually he's right. So something will come up. You just have to wait. And don't engage right away with the first student who is saying something, because then you're taking the burden from the others to do something. Just let it flow. So if the person says something, thank you, interesting, let's wait again. You need to be able to endure the silence. And sometimes I tell them, look, it's your time. You can decide how to use it. You can be quiet or you can do something, whatever it is. Groups sometimes don't like that because you are not a good authority figure. You are not a good object, so to speak. And you might be tempted to be a good object for the group. And that means you start lecturing, potentially start lecturing. And that is doing the work for the group and not helpful for the group. It's like taking a painkiller. The pain goes away of the quiet time, but it doesn't solve the issue. So that's the thing. At the end, we usually every time we tell people, remember that you do some individual journaling. 5 minutes, totally enough. What did you observe about the group's process? Just describe it. How did you feel about the discussion? In that case of attendance, that is a specific question that we have added because it was a discussion in the first session. So if this doesn't come up, please don't ask this question. Just as an example, what feelings did you have about what happened or did not happen? What were missed opportunities? And why was it important to miss them? Those questions might seem strange to those unfamiliar with them. They are fantastic. And the last one, what are you curious about? And we always tell students, because it's a university class, so they have to write an exam. The exam is a reflection paper. We always tell them, if you do individual journaling at the end, the paper will be a breeze. Super easy. We might talk about AI if we haven't done that already. So whether students use AI to do that, which is something you immediately notice at the lecture, but maybe that's something for the end. So that was session 2, the Johari window. And in the next video, in the next week, potentially, of the class, we will talk about boundaries and how to manage these boundaries. That's about it. If you have any questions, if anything is unclear, leave it in the comments and we try to get back to them. Or if there is another way that you would like to contact us, free to do that. We also learn all the time because sometimes we are sitting in our own box. So thank you very much for watching this. It has become quite long again, but this is basically exactly the time that we need, Roland, more or less, to prepare for these sessions. All right, Roland, thank you very much for your perspectives. Yeah. See you next time.
Thank you, Jürgen. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.